This is The Warrior's Journey, a podcast designed to equip, inspire, and bridge the gap between military members, veterans, their families, and our communities. The Warrior's Journey is an interactive online community where warriors and their families can find resources and encouragement to navigate the unique challenges they face, and presents the message of faith as the path to finding wholeness in everyday life. For questions, resources, and to find ways to get involved, visit thewarriorsjourney.org.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Warrior's Journey podcast. Very excited to introduce a really amazing guest to you guys this morning. This guy has been so impactful in my life. He's a lot of the reason why I'm here and why I'm doing the SOF initiative, just because of really cool interaction he and I have had together, the friendship we've had together, and just really excited to let Tyler Patten share his story with you guys. And Tyler, welcome to the podcast, man.
It's surreal to be here. It's definitely surreal to be here. I can't believe that we're sitting across from each other all these weeks, months, years later after talking about this. It's really cool to be here. Thanks for dinner last night. Thank you for your wife and kids for hosting me and being here in the studio today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so a little backstory on Tyler. We've known each other for 15 years now, and 15 years. We started in day one of boot camp together, which is pretty crazy when you think about how fast 15 years has gone. But there was about 5 of us that really we could tell we were like-minded, and we kind of latched on to one another and really grew our friendships from day one. And we went through the boot camp process together, and then went to Buds together. And I don't say this lightly, and I very rarely say this, but you were a guy that was cut from the same cloth, didn't end up making it through. There were some unfortunate circumstances that took place, and you and I have talked about this several times. Feel like it probably was not handled appropriately, but we'll save that for a side conversation. But I just want you to know, from the bottom of my heart, I truly know how tough you are. I know how much you love our country. I love, I know how much you wanted to serve in that community. And so I do not say it lightly, but you were cut from that cloth. And I have full faith that if that wouldn't have happened, you would have been there. So I just want you to know that. And
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, we had day one boot camp. Looking back on it now, it's like we were just early 20s guys. And it's just, it's crazy to think back to that time period, being in our early 20s, what stage of life we were at back then, and then fast forward to sitting here at Warrior's Journey today. It's just awesome to be here.
Yeah. So, Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit of, what your time in the Navy looked like? Because you ended up going and serving, 4-year contract. And if you want to tell a little bit about that. And
So we, like you said, day one boot camp together, getting yelled at and screamed at in Great Lakes together. It was actually interesting. I think I was one of the few guys, at least a smaller population within our class, that was married prior to boot camp. I can't think of a lot of guys at that time.
Yeah.
But also we were married. Allie and I were married young, so we were married before boot camp during college, and that was definitely a different dynamic. Leaving my wife. We were together every day for years before the military. Then going to boot camp, going to Chicago, having honestly a pretty good time. I mean, minus probably the first couple of weeks of boot camp where it was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
I enjoyed the time. I enjoyed the process. And then going into the Naval Special Warfare Preparatory School, again, you're getting paid to work out, train, hang with your best buds the entire time. I thought that was great. And like you said, getting shipped out to Coronado, that was always the dream, right? To be in Coronado, to stand there, dedicating so much life to that. quitting my job, selling my car, selling everything to get there. And so I enjoyed the time. I was very fortunate too. While we were there, I fell in love with Coronado. I fell in love with San Diego. Really just, I loved that West Coast beach kind of feel. So I was very fortunate that after Buds that I was able to stay in San Diego. I was just, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else except for maybe Hawaii.
Yeah.
Where you were. But I was very fortunate. I did fall in love with San Diego. Made some really great friends in the fleet. Guys that I still talk to today. Not as often, but when we do catch up, it's almost like no time has passed. Yeah, fell in love with San Diego, hanging out with my buddies in the military. Kind of split time between working in the logistics world, working in some of the cruiser weapons, getting qualified in some of the weapon systems in the military that the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps has to offer. I was part of a joint Navy and Marine command, a Marine Corps, like an expeditionary unit. So it was a lot of fun to work with those guys. Working with them and fighting over gym time. You know, the gym is split between Navy and Marine, so you had to fight for that gym time.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really fun. I definitely enjoyed being in San Diego, working with those guys. Allie was a rock during that time. She was obviously in San Diego working out and running on the beaches, soft sand beach runs, doing CrossFit and everything. So, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. And so you did your 4 years in San Diego, and then, what were you feeling at that point? How'd you know it was time to transition into the next line of work, which I'm really excited to dive into that one because I think, what I really want people to understand about you is you just have this servant heart, and you've always put our country first. And, that's one thing I admire about you. But, what was your decision point like?
Yeah, so we were in San Diego. I had 2 back-to-back knee surgeries while in the military. During that time, Allie and I started to start a family when we were in the military. So we had our oldest, McKenna, who's now 12. We had McKenna, so I guess I'll rewind a little bit. Starting the family piece, we found out we were pregnant with McKenna on a Saturday morning. By Monday, I was packing my bags to head out for 6 months, basically.
Wow.
Leaving behind a pregnant wife. It wasn't, at least for me at the time, I was thinking, not a big deal. Allie's a rock. She can handle it. I did make it back just in time for the pregnancy, or for the birth, sorry.
Yeah.
Birth of McKenna. And it was like one of the best days of my life, honestly. Becoming a father, that was one of the highlights of my life for sure. And we started our family in San Diego. 2 years later, we had our second daughter, Lulana. We call her Lulu. And had Lulu. During this time, we were really battling with McKenna the epilepsy that she was born with. So going through all of her seizures, watching her, trying to figure out with Navy doctors, how do we combat this? Like we're brand new parents. You're learning on the fly, essentially. Changing diapers, your formula, is the water hot enough? All these things, right? On top of these major medical concerns at the time of McKenna's epilepsy. We have our second child in the military, Lulu. At that time, she was days old in the hospital when we found out that she had a virus that attacked her heart. And for the entire time that she had to stay at the hospital, which was days, felt like years, it ended up being she was in the NICU for almost an entire summer. And we were told every day that she wasn't going to make it.
Wow.
Her heart indicators, her cell tissue breakdown, she wasn't going to make it. And trying to be a part of the big department of the Navy system being dependable, being the guy who works hard and you can count on, but also being the guy that somehow back home I could be dependable, be a father, a husband. It was a really tough balance. So long story short, we fast forward out of, I guess, that time period where Lulu somehow miraculously recovered by the grace of God. We still to this day, I can't believe that we were able to get 2 years with her. It was just the most amazing 2 years again. But fast forward, I thought I need to be there for my family, however that looks like. We have McKenna with epilepsy, Lulu that we were fighting for every day just to make sure that she was going to be alive. And so at the time, it was, I need to transition out of the military. I need to get out, focus on my family. I didn't know what that looked like. I do know that transition-wise, I was going to miss the service aspect. I was going to miss being able to be a part of a larger team, that my level of dedication, my level of work ethic was a part of that. So I knew I was going to miss that aspect, but I also knew that the importance of family and having a strong family unit too.
Yeah.
So that was really the driving factor of getting out.
Yeah, I think Tyler said something very interesting that I think we all are guilty of. But you said, "Oh, I'm leaving." You found out Allie was pregnant. You're like, "I'm leaving." You're like, "She's got it." Like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, we do that time and time again to our spouses, right? We're like, we've been blessed with these amazing, tough spouses that do hold it down, but we put a lot on their shoulders. So I thought that was very interesting. You said that. As you know, that's a very similar story to me of just, I was tired of being away from the family, and it was wearing on me. And I think a lot of times the spouse's stress and the weight that they carry goes unnoticed because
100%.
they're kind of the afterthought. They're like, they got it. So I think, as it is hard to make that transition out, I think you and I are aligned of, we had to do it for our families, for our spouses, to be the fathers. So it's a tough decision, but I'm glad you were able to make that decision and felt confident with it. So then you transition out of the Navy, and then what do you do? Because I love this part.
I still wanted to serve. I still wanted to be part of a community, that brotherhood, that fraternity of guys that they're all working towards a common goal of service. So when I got out, is interesting. I got out of the military. We moved back to Colorado, where we grew up, and I thought, okay, what am I going to do with my life? I still want to serve. I still want to do something. I was thinking about federal service. I was a lot of different things. But a friend of mine at the time had mentioned, why don't you look into law enforcement? I was like, oh my gosh, no way. Like, I don't know if I could do that. Long story short, I went on a ride along with my police department, and it's a suburb. It's South Denver, a suburb of south of Denver. And went on a ride along, didn't know what to expect. I'm wearing khaki pants and a white button-up per policy. That's what ride-along attendees have to wear.
Yeah.
And I go on a ride-along. I thought, okay, this is, generally speaking, the area that I grew up in. Like, what really happens here? You bust a high school party, and that's it.
Yeah.
I go on this ride-along, and it was, first stop was a drug bust on the side of the road at a gas station. I'm like, whoa. This happens where I grew up. This happens beneath the everyday surface of life. Ends up leading to warrant arrests and taking a trip down to jail. It was just a lot of fun. So I thought, well, maybe this is something I could entertain. So I did apply. I applied for that police department and showed up day one at the conference centers with a table, multiple tables, huge, 8-person tables, circle tables, and everyone around me is doing their speech in front of the chief. Like, oh yeah, I was a cadet at this program. I was an explorer at this program, and it got to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, my name's Tyler. I just got out of the military a few days ago. Thought this would be a great career field. Still wanted to serve. Out of 120 people, I was fortunate enough to be the one selected. They only were hiring one person at the time. So they sponsored me through the academy in Lakewood, if anybody's familiar with Lakewood, Colorado. Sponsored me through the academy, and paid for everything, paid my salary to get sponsored and get post-certified. And I knew at that moment that it was something special again, just because I feel like, probably to my own demise, that, my military career was cut short. It wasn't exactly the picture I wanted to paint for myself, for my family. And maybe that's a selfish way of thinking, because ultimately I know that, I'm not always in control of my life. No matter how badly I want something, God's in control. He can handle these things. So it was just a way for me to continue that service. Jumped in the law enforcement world.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, just to recap, like, that's what I've always loved about you. You and I still to this day are continuously hopping on the phone and talking about how do we serve our country? How do we, serve our veteran community best? How do we, how do we get out there and be the biggest light for our country and for our veterans? So I've always appreciated that about you, and love that that you hopped into law enforcement. And one thing that's come up a lot between you and I's conversations is you never really took time to decompress in between jumping out of the Navy and going into law enforcement. How did that go? How was that for you? Was it? Why don't you talk through that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was, I talked about this. I feel like it's one of the tactics of the evil one, is to keep men busy, to keep us distracted. And so going from the military, I guess I'll back up a little bit. Prior to Allie and I getting married, getting baptized, going through, going to church every Sunday, praying, being together, it's an easier path, I think, to have a more structured Christian home. Getting to the military, the schedule's broken up. You're gone for 6 months. You're home for the birth of your first kiddo for 3 weeks, and then you're gone for 3 months, and then you're home for 3 weeks, and then you're gone for 2 months.
Yeah.
Those trainings, those workups, that schedule, it just keeps you busy, and it's a different busy. You're just a part of that system. And so transitioning out of the military, transitioning to law enforcement, you lose track of that. You lose track of piecing that Christian foundation together.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, what was the question again? Sorry.
No, you're good. I think you said we're losing that. You lose that piece of having the Christianity in the home. And one thing I'd be interested in hearing is like how that impacted you, of just going straight from the Navy into law enforcement without really taking a pause, taking a break.
You go from one system to the next. That's what I was getting at. That's right. You're going from one system to the next. You're integrated into this system, and you do the best you can for your family life and your kids and all those things. But you go from that system to another big kind of cultural system. I did not take time to slow down. I didn't take time to have that internal reflection of, where do I want to be? What do I see from my family? I mean, you take time to plan missions. You take time to do an after action report. You're dissecting all these things, but we don't do it in our life, especially during transitions. So I really didn't take time to focus on what I wanted for my family, and that's a detriment if you don't have those regular check-ins with your family, like your team, your family team. And so we experienced that. I wouldn't say our marriage was falling apart, but at times it certainly felt like it was unraveling.
Yeah.
We did not take those times. Straight from military, straight to law enforcement, the health complications of the kids. Those were the central focus. And so thinking back to that time period, we had no maintenance checks.
Yeah.
In our marriage. It was just off to the next thing.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point of, and that's why I want to highlight that, because I know how tough that was to go from Navy to law enforcement for you, because of the type of guys we are, we put the mission first. So you roll into law enforcement. I'm kind of putting words into your story, but you roll into law enforcement, and like the crime that was there, the people that were there, you put them before yourself. Even you put them, you didn't pour into yourself and grow yourself spiritually, or the family starts to not get as much of your energy. And that's kind of the same in the Navy and then into law enforcement. And that's just kind of the sacrifice you've made for a lot of years for our country.
Sorry to interrupt. You do see it. I mean, you see guys that transition through these phases of life, and like we were talking about on the way down here, us men, like we're supposed to be well-oiled machines, and if we don't have those maintenance checks and we don't have regular check-ins, there's no just like your vehicle, there's no check engine light that goes on. You're just going to keep going until you run yourself dry, and that is what I've seen in myself and a lot of peers and a lot of people around me. As you know, law enforcement there's a ton of folks that transition out of the military into law enforcement. And I've watched them do the same thing. They go straight from whatever branch of the military of service for whatever reason. I think most Americans, most guys who join, most folks that join, men and women who join, is for the purpose of having an impact. Some people in the military have a larger, more direct impact. Some people have a different impact, a smaller impact potentially. But I see that we have no time to sit back and have that reflection period during those transition times.
Yeah.
It's a detriment.
Yeah. And that's tough because, this next part of the story is the enemy had kind of set up he'd kind of been chipping away of knowing he was separating. And, this next part of the story, it's pretty heartbreaking to hear. But if you want to kind of elaborate on why you transitioned out of law enforcement and kind of where the enemy had you, and just kind of walk us through what happened. And
so, if you can visualize this landscape of my life at the time, it was, Allie and I were married. Lukewarm. I'll call myself lukewarm in the faith, in my faith. Going through the military, losing a lot of not exercising that muscle, right? So you start to lose that piece while you're in the military. Transition out, same thing. You get into law enforcement. You shake hands at graduation. They give you your certificate, to the circus. Transition into law enforcement as an actual career field. So I'm already starting to lose my faith. I'm starting to lose a lot of foundational aspects of my family, not being the household leader, not being the husband or father that we're called to be. I'm on shift. This is 2016. I'm on shift. I get a call from my sister-in-law, my wife's youngest sister. Says, you need to come home. Well, let me back up. My Allie, we have McKenna. We have Lulu. Lulu is, for all intents and purposes, she's healthy. We're out of the hospital. We're doing great. The only thing, at least in my mind, we're worried about is McKenna's seizures. Lulu's relatively healthy child. We're pregnant with our twins at the time. Allie gives birth to our twins. Mind you, I'm in law enforcement, working night shift, dead as a dog, not attentive to my family. I get a call from my sister-in-law during this time period. And so Allie gives birth to our twins. And for any husbands, fathers, wives out there with multiple children, you know how difficult of a, challenging of a journey that is to have multiple babies at once.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
So my wife gives birth to our twins. So McKenna, Lulu, and our twins. 1 month later, I'm on shift, and I get a call from my sister-in-law. Says, you need to come home to what is my in-laws' house, because Allie needed help at the time with me going back to work. She's like, you need to come home to my in-laws' house. Lulu's not breathing. And I'm like, I'm on shift. I'm in full uniform, pistol, magazines, everything. And I'm thinking, well, wouldn't paramedics be there? I didn't even, I almost knew at that time when she said it, but I didn't want to ask the question on the phone. I got in the squad car, drove to my in-laws' house, which was only about maybe 5-10 minutes away from our police kind of headquarters area. Jump in our squad car, Ford Explorer, drive to my in-laws' house, a few minutes down the road, just outside of our jurisdiction. And as I'm pulling up, I see sheriff's office, I see EMTs, fire, the fire EMT aspect. I see everybody there, and I walk in to my in-laws' house. I open up the front door, and it's kind of a blur. Like, it's just the trauma, the grief. I don't quite remember everything clearly, but I remember walking in, seeing Allie crying, seeing my sister-in-law crying, everyone's crying, and nobody's holding my child.
Mm.
And as a parent, at that moment, I knew the worst had happened.
Gosh.
Like, I walk into their house, and again, unbeknownst to me, those regular maintenance checks, like we talked about, as a vehicle, as a man trying to keep it all together, not doing those things, you're already in a weakened state, right? From a spiritual aspect, from a mental, emotional, maybe not physical. I mean, I was working out, running, swimming, CrossFit, jiu-jitsu, whatever. So I was already in a weakened state, and then you pile on that. So you go from military transition to law enforcement, straight to losing a child. And at that moment, I told myself, how can there be a God? How can this happen to a family that has tried to do everything right? Everything right we could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Waited till marriage, proposing at Adoration Chapel, going to church, praying before meals. I'm like, how can this be some divine plan? I walk upstairs and I see Lulu laying on the carpet, and there's a deputy sheriff. I don't know what I was going to say, sheriff's office. A deputy sheriff standing there. I'm in uniform. He's looking at me like a brother that's hurting. I'm looking at him, and he just looked at me like, I'm so sorry, man. He just gave me a hug. I didn't know him. To this day, I can't even picture what his face looks like.
Yeah.
I just replay that series of events slowly but surely, of like a choppy story coming into play, of my father-in-law coming in, who is an unbelievable rock in that family. My mother-in-law, I mean, everybody that's there, and I can't but picture bits and pieces of it, other than replaying in my head so many days, so many mornings, waking up thinking, this is still a bad dream. I'm going to wake up, all my babies are going to be there, we're going to go on vacations and plan weddings and, birthday parties and Thanksgivings and Christmases and things of that nature. But obviously not the case.
Man.
And I think that was the tipping point of me abandoning the idea of faith, my faith in God.
Yeah.
And ultimately what you do at that time is you abandon hope.
Wow.
Abandon hope.
Yeah.
And there's no darker feeling than that, going from that moment on for your life.
Wow. Yeah, and I appreciate you being willing to share that. And you and I have had this conversation about Lulu, about, the incident so many times. And, I just always expressed to you, as a father of four, I couldn't imagine, but you painting the picture, I mean, my heart has always just felt for you, because I just couldn't imagine that. And, fast forward the story a little bit, when we transitioned out of the military, we moved to Colorado, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was the first or second celebration of life you guys had for Lulu. That was really when you and I reconnected. We had just got to Colorado, and I was really reaching out to touch base with you, and you're like, oh, hey, we're having a celebration of life for Lulu. Yeah. And that was really when you and I reconnected, back in, I think it was 2017 or 18.
Yeah, that was the second one we had, I think.
Yeah.
That celebration.
And I remember being there and seeing you were still law enforcement, or no, you'd stepped away from law enforcement, but a lot of your law enforcement buddies were there.
Yep.
And I just remember stepping back and trying to put myself in your shoes and just being like, man, because we had just had our third, and I just couldn't imagine. So, I couldn't imagine what the next few years look like for you, thinking, there might not be faith, or there isn't faith present. There's no hope. What does that journey look like for the next 5-6 years? I think you said almost 10 years. What does, walk us through where you kind of went in a headspace, I guess.
I will say, from a support structure, Allie and I had a tremendous amount of support from the police department, from the local, that fire department, surrounding, departments, friends, family, folks that I'd never met before. So we had a tremendous amount of support in that regard. But like I said, the moment any parent has to sit there in their in-laws' house and wrap your child in a blanket and hand her over to the corner as a final goodbye, it'll change your life.
Mm.
And at that time, I really made a vow. It was almost an internal, I don't know if an internal promise or some sort of internal dialogue where I'm like, I'm never going to church again. I'm never going to church again. I'm not praying again. I'm not going to spend the time and waste my energy on doing something that I feel like I've given so much to on a daily, weekly basis to get slapped in the face.
Mm.
So for those years after, I buried myself in work. I was working a ton. I was traveling. I guess I superficially filled my time with things, worldly things.
Yeah.
And I stopped going to church. I absolutely, and this is one of the most heartbreaking parts when I think back to that time, ridiculed my family, my wife most especially, of her faith, and continuing to hold on to that faith during that time of she's latching onto that for strength and guidance and support, knowing that there's a bigger picture, knowing there's a bigger plan.
Mm-hmm.
And me just saying, those things we talked about. How can you believe in God when these things happen? How could you lean on something or some entity or some being, some higher power, knowing that he just took our daughter away? That makes no sense to me. Logically, I'm like that at the time. Like, this makes no sense to me. Completely abandoned the faith.
I think your exact words. We were talking about this morning, and you basically said you were a flat out jerk to Allie and to the kids, and not proud of it, right? But
keep crying about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, I was horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of language I can use in this podcast, but I was not a good guy.
Yeah. That's why I summarized it to jerk. We'll leave it at that for the podcast. But
yeah, I was not a good guy.
No, I mean, and everything you're laying out, that's kind of that's a natural human instinct, right? Is to that's the easy button. It's like, well, I'm just going to shut down. I'm gonna be mean to everybody else. I'm gonna question that. But as the story progresses, we see it's a new light. But before we get to that, why don't you bring us to what you would say probably your second darkest moment in life is, because you were kind of, like you said, working. You were busy in your work. You actually got back into law enforcement after a couple of years. You got back in law enforcement, and then you guys knew it was time to relocate from Colorado.
Yep.
But the whole journey, that's probably four years of that journey, and then
4, 5, 6 years, yeah.
Of no faith, of just feeling bitterness inside, and then where do you find yourself?
Yeah, so I ended up getting back into law enforcement. I just still had the itch to serve. I needed that I needed that time to step back, make sure that I was not a detriment to our department, our team, safety, making sure that my mind wasn't too cloudy, which looking back, I mean, it certainly was. So I jumped back into law enforcement. Still didn't really have a faith. Totally abandoned that idea. We at the time, so we had McKenna and our twins, and then our youngest. Decided that with some of the political climate going on in law enforcement around the country, working with amazing people, but just knowing that I think that chapter, I was ready to close that chapter. I wanted a more simplistic life. I was searching for that peace, and I thought it was in good old Wyoming. I wanted that simplistic life. I wanted to not see the daily stressors of the law enforcement world, be able to internalize some of the things I was going through and find peace in my life. I thought it was mainly based around potentially like a location, which location and those things, they might help to a degree, but it's not going to ultimately solve any problems. We move up to Wyoming, bought a little ranch out in the middle of nowhere, thinking that this would help create an ease in my life, like some sort of like, all right, I can take a deep breath. All I have to worry about is chopping wood and growing food and getting some chickens and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And those are earthly peace modalities, I guess.
Yeah.
But while we were in Wyoming, living up there, I knew I was feeling down. I knew I was feeling depressed. I knew that, I told Allie this before too, that I think I was like one of the best actors in the world during that time, for that 10 years. Like I could have won an Oscar and Academy Award.
Yeah.
I was a really good actor. And I think I've taken a lot of that from that, putting on that face mask, even from my childhood, living with a single mother, living with her, mental health and her addiction and mental health problems. I think I was really good at carrying on that mask. But to kind of further the story, when Lulu passed away, the day after, we saw the biggest and brightest rainbow. And for anybody who's even somewhat familiar with the biblical stories of the rainbow being a symbol of hope, and for us, it was Lulu giving us a sign the very next day. This insane, just unbelievable rainbow. It was a sign for us that everything's going to be okay. And it was a little bit mushy-gushy for me at the time. I didn't quite understand it. But so fast forward to Wyoming, I'm sitting in what I've tried to create the most peaceful environment for myself, trying to have peace of mind from the pain of childhood trauma, the pain of living throughout the transitions of military, law enforcement, losing child back to back to back, health complications with our oldest, health complications with our twins, who all three have epilepsy. It just felt like it was back to back to back. And I was like, I have no hope. I can't find joy in my day. I'm working. We have a little 10-acre, little P-Dunk little house in Wyoming.
Yeah.
I've tried to create all these things, and I still can't find peace. I have no God in my life. And I'm thinking, this is not the life that I envisioned. This is the life that I thought was promised to me in a selfish way. Allie and the girls I think they were actually down in Colorado for the girls' doctor's appointments. So again, just to add on to that, it's like the health complications, watching your children go through the seizures, it's like, God, can I just get a break?
Yeah.
Can you give me one day where I feel peace of mind, please? And it's not through going to jiu-jitsu. It's not doing something extracurricular. It's not through golf. It's not through things that maybe a lot of guys would find that peace in. I just wanted that mental break. I just wanted a time where I could wake up and think, okay, life is good. I feel great today. I'm ready to tackle the world. So Allie and the girls were down in Colorado for Children's Hospital doctor's appointments, as per usual at the time. And I was getting ready for bed by myself in a dark house, nobody around, no neighbors, nothing. And went to my gun safe, grabbed my Glock, grabbed my 40, threw in a magazine, pulled that slide back, and was like, "This is it." Like I need to find. I just wanted to break so bad from. I mean, again, all these years, childhood, and just little things that maybe we overlook as a society, whether it's just little things, childhood or divorced parents, military, law enforcement, all these things. I was like, I just want just. At the time, it was a quick Band-Aid solution of I just need to find a break. So I was sitting in my room with my pistol, with my Glock. That this is the best solution. I spent every logical way of trying to rationalize. Allie has a great family. Her parents are wonderful. Her siblings are amazing. She has probably the strongest support system I've ever seen in my life. And there's no other wife. There probably is, but in my head I'm thinking there's no other wife out there who has that support system.
Yeah.
Has that family and siblings and friends and family, like all those people, her church, everything. I'm like, she has the strongest support system. If anybody could take the fact that her husband would take his own life, would be Allie. She can handle that.
Yeah.
And that's an unfair burden. And I sat there with my gun thinking, I've gone through so much. I just don't know if I could do another day. And maybe I could, thinking at the time, but I'm thinking to myself and rationalizing that she can take it. The world doesn't necessarily need me in it. There's tons of other guys out there that, if Allie ever remarried or whatever, and I would have to say it was Lulu and God that stopped me. When you get to that point as a man, and you're sitting there thinking there's nothing else that I can do, that I can offer. I can't give anything. I have no service to give. I have nothing else.
Yeah.
That was it. And by the grace of God, somehow, some way, one of the big things that stopped me was I just don't want my kids to walk into a horrible scene.
Yeah.
I've been a part of it. I've seen those in law enforcement. And I just don't want them to walk into that. If there was an easier, more clean solution, let them walk into that, but don't let them walk into sitting in a bedroom, seeing their father like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, one thing as I hear you kind of talking through that night and just thinking, having those thoughts, I'll never forget, when you and I talked about this story, again, you and I have talked about it in depth multiple times. I think when you first told me about it, you said kind of to the point of the family, you thought the family would be better if you were to do that, and you thought, oh, my family will be better off. And you hear these, that's how the enemy works, right? The enemy was just, for years, he was just saying, no, you got nothing else to do. You're not good enough. You shouldn't be the father to these girls. You shouldn't be the husband to Allie. And it's just the enemy attacking you. And praise God that, that you didn't do anything that night and that you came to your senses, like you said, for your family. God had to have played a part of that. He had to have been moving in that. And, yeah, man, I just, you can hear the pain in your story. And, so for anyone, we'll just take a quick pause for anyone listening right now. If you're in this situation, do you have words of encouragement, words of advice of just,
it will get better. There's no season of life that lasts forever. And especially if you're willing to turn and make a pivot in your life, as hard as it is, to some sort of something above yourself, whether it's, you know, some sort of spirituality, belief in God, whatever it is, there's something bigger at play. We're so centrally focused on the events that happen at that time. And if there's somebody out there listening that can just take that step back for just a minute, as difficult as it is, to step back and know that that season of life does not last forever. That there is a God who loves you and cares about you and wants to provide the things for you that you need at the time. Not that you want at the time, but the things that you need at the time, to get through life. Because it's almost like I tell maybe like a younger generation, maybe they're struggling in high school or getting bullied or whatever. It's like that season of life doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
If I could go back and do high school all over again, it's like, yeah, I would definitely do things differently, but that season of life doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
Your pains won't last forever. The superficial, temporary happiness thing, they don't last forever.
Yeah.
But that joy in God, that belief, that love of God, those last forever.
Yeah.
And I was missing the mark on that for a long time.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So for everybody out there, listen to Tyler. Tyler was there firsthand. He's walked through that pain. And with that, you know, that's what we're here for. That's what the Warriors journey is doing. We're locking arms with guys. So if you are out there and you need somebody to talk to, you need help, reach out to one of us. I'm sure we could even get him in contact with you. I'm sure you'd be happy to do that. So just know, not only does it not last forever, but there are people out there willing to step in and help you face that challenge. So,
Dive in. This organization, as I sit here today, just the warm welcome from everybody coming in, and Clay, everybody coming in here. It wasn't. I was thinking when I first walked in, it's kind of this alpha macho, like, you know, I was this and this, and you don't get that here. It's guys who just really wanted to help you.
yeah.
It wasn't, you know, there's my background, here's what I did. You know, I was in the teams, or I got tabbed, I did this or that, or whatever, got penned in this. I walked in, everybody was like genuinely wants to serve and help this community. And it's a pretty amazing feeling. So
Yeah.
let's say my cup of coffee here from Warriors Journey.
So, and that brings me to, you know, when we started this podcast, I kind of highlighted, you are a lot of the reason I'm even here, because for those that know my story, I've had a call in my heart for a long time, and I just kept pushing it off. So if we want to go to kind of fast forward, and as we start to wrap this up, we got, 15 minutes or so, but, I think it was the end of 2022. So our friendship, ever since we had transitioned to Colorado, we got to reconnect with you guys at Lulu's Celebration of Life. Mm-hmm. We kind of maintained our text friendship, if you will. You know, we'd kind of check in on each other once a month, maybe, just occasionally, nothing crazy, but just kind of, how you doing? How's the family? So we kind of always stayed in contact.
Normal basis.
Yeah. Just a normal amount. But in 2022, we had a pretty cool encounter that really strengthened our friendship. And, if you kind of want to take it away and share what you want to out of that, but it kind of brings this whole story back into full circle. So it's really cool if you want to kind of open up on that.
Yeah. So, to kind of piece it all together, the night that I decided not to take my own life, the next morning I woke up and I saw probably the second brightest rainbow I've ever seen in my life. And
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I was getting ready for work. My eyes were bloodshot. I've been crying all night. I woke up and saw the brightest rainbow I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, okay, there's a little glimmer of hope. I would say that was probably one of the first kind of cracks in my armor of getting back to faith, potentially. Or maybe that was like the first tiny little granule stepping stone. So, yeah, we had reconnected. I was driving back up to my house in Wyoming, our little ranch, and we were talking about another friend that you and I had worked together and been around in the military. I knew then and know now that he's struggling. And so we're thinking, gosh, how do we help somebody like that? And so we were talking about it, and I just get choked up because it's just such a surreal moment. We're talking about those things, and you had asked, is his faith life, where's he at? And I was like, oh gosh, he doesn't have a faith life. Like military, Afghanistan, deployments. I'll just say deployments. Law enforcement now, and so we're talking about it. I'm like, yeah, he doesn't have that. And you're like, that's a foundational, that's a big pillar to be missing. And you flat out asked me, you're like, where's your faith life at? It's like, whoa. Why are you asking me this? My family doesn't even ask me this. And I remember talking to you. I was like, I don't have a faith life. Stopped going to church. But Allie and the girls still do. Allie's raising our girls, in that environment. And but I was like, it's just not for me or whatever. But when we ended the conversation, it was you'd said very bluntly, very direct, straight to the heart. You're like, hey. Well, it's great talking with you. Before we hang up, do you mind if I say a prayer? I thought, holy smokes, what is going on? I was like, if you were my wife, I would have shut this down 20 seconds ago. But anyway, yeah, I reluctantly said yes. I said, yeah, but I mean, you do you. If you want to go ahead and say a prayer, that's on you. I'll you can pray and I'll sit here and listen.
Yeah.
And you led us in prayer. And I remember thinking, just little movement on the heart, right? Just another little crack in the armor, and little things that eventually led after that. That was a real pivotal turning point of that interaction, kind of like a swim buddy mentality. You weren't going to let me fail, even to my own demise, even to my own selfish plans and thoughts and whatnot. That you were willing to be vulnerable in that moment too, to say, hey, let's pray together. Somebody that you just heard say, I don't go to church, I don't pray, I don't do those things. And B, just open up yourself to say, I'm sharing my faith with you. And I think that's a huge piece of taking that first step for a lot of warriors that are hurting out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I on that phone call, I could sense the pain. I could sense the hurt. And like you said, you brought up a very good point of, for 10 years, you were a great actor. And, even when I saw you when we were reconnecting back in 2018, I thought, yeah, this guy's good. He's been through some pain, but, he's handling it well. And, first and foremost, like, thank you for being vulnerable and being willing to say, I don't have the faith. And when I could hear the pain, like I knew who you were when you did have faith, right? I knew you from day one of boot camp. And so for me, I'm like, that's not the Tyler I know. And, this guy's hurting, I need to be there for him and, need to pray for him. And, one of the coolest things is, I literally started set weekly reminders of like, I'm gonna follow up with Tyler because he needs me. And, I hope guys out there are encouraged by that of like, if you would ask me 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if I would be able to like share my faith with a fellow brother and like a guy of your caliber, like, I would probably say no. Like I would be intimidated to be like, hey, Tyler, let me share faith. But I could tell you were hurting. I could tell that you were saying you didn't want it, but you really did. So we kind of talked for the next few weeks and, about a month in, I remember you saying like, hey man, like I don't even let my family pray with me. Like, and you keep saying like, you're like, I don't know, something's moving in my heart. I can feel like stuff falling away. And I don't know if you want to kind of wrap up the story of how it ends. I think.
So starting with that conversation and a lot, I mean, and not to discredit, I mean, family, friends, a lot of people who had continually prayed for me, my soul, for like a decade, basically. Knowing that those people were it was just the culmination of all those things.
Absolutely.
Those people too. It's just continuing to pray and genuinely cared about my soul, myself, like my eternity, basically. And so, yeah, I just over those past early months, like right after that conversation, I just felt little shifts in my mindset and my heart, and it really helped propel me into, I would say, the last few years where it was just little incremental steps. There was nothing. It wasn't this big aha moment where all of a sudden you're a hurting veteran, a hurting warrior, and all of a sudden you just like flip the switch. You're like, man, I feel great. Like this is it. I'm set. Like I made that switch. It was just little things like daily scripture reading, daily prayer, little things that keep you sharp in the faith. And I wouldn't say that life is easier, but I think I'm more well equipped to be able to handle the things that life throws at me. I think my first like visceral response would be, yeah, we've had seizures and things the past few years, but it's been like a lot easier than the last previous 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And I think really it's just because I have, a strong swim buddy. I have a faith. I have more than just what's going on around me. And that's been the game changer, really. Having those regular check-ins with you, having that more spiritual structure, I think that just gives you so much more of a toolbox to be able to handle the daily stressors of life and the bad things that life can throw at you still. I think just knowing that if you take a step back, that there's a bigger plan. There's a divine physician out there who's looking after us no matter what we think. And that's been like the main ingredient for this change, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know, yeah, your family is, so supportive. They've been by your side the whole time. I love Allie. I know she was there for you even in the times when you were saying you didn't want it. I know she was there praying for you, and yeah, your family's awesome, and I'm glad they were able to rally around you. And I'm just so grateful for our friendship, our connection that we've had, that we were able to share that experience. And again, kind of anybody out there that might be in the same situation of like, gosh, I need to talk to somebody, or if somebody's feeling like I need to be out there encouraging people, again, you can reach out. We're building this whole, this program for, equipping guys to go out and do that, and to feel comfortable, confident going out there and doing it. And, I hope guys can see the vulnerability here of what it takes to open up and share your story. And I think that's where the real healing comes. So, thank you for being willing to open up and share.
Yeah. One more thing to add, if you're at that point, if you're listening to this and you just happen to stumble across, this podcast or the Warrior's Journey or, Troy or this organization, and you're at that point of being a Tyler, where you're sitting at the end of your bed with thinking I have no hope. I'm in a dark spot. I've gone to the VA, or I've talked to family, I've talked to friends, nobody understands, nobody gets this weight that I'm carrying. What do you have to lose ultimately by reaching out to an organization like this? What do you ultimately have to lose? A framework that you maybe don't believe in, didn't quote work for me.
No.
Then what's the worst thing that could happen by reaching out and just saying, hey, I saw this podcast, or I came across this, or I was driving down the road and saw this sign. I would say that if you're ever at that point, there's not a huge, your ROI is greater than your risk, the risk that you're going to take by just reaching out.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Awesome. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you taking the time. And again, just, I'm so grateful for your friendship. It's been 15 years, and
15 years.
yeah, just having this ongoing dialogue of where we can lean on each other. We can keep each other accountable. And we can share the good times. We can share the bad times. I mean, we don't hold anything back from one another, and it's been life-changing for me. Again, just kind of recapping, like after our interaction and feeling a call from God on my heart, and then you and I have that interaction, it's what spurred me to take the leap, to come on board with the Warriors journey and really, figure out what my next mission is. So I am forever grateful to you. I love, again, Allie. I love your girls. Like, your guys' family is awesome. And I just thank you for taking the time, being willing to come down here and share your story. It's very impactful, and I think it'll help so many, not only veteran service members, but just men in general who might be experiencing something similar. So thank you for your vulnerability and being willing. And next time you're coming through town, maybe we'll have the next topic. Have you back on here and tell some more of the story. So
yes, thank you, Warriors Journey, hosting me, having me here, share story. We're storytellers, and I think these are really good, impactful stories that we can implement and help other guys out there. So men and women out there. So I'm just very thankful to be here, thankful to sit across from you and be able to have this opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you guys watching the Warriors Journey podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Warriors Journey podcast. Be sure to leave a review, and to ask questions, give, or get involved, visit TWJ.org today. The Warriors Journey. Warriors helping warriors heal invisible wounds.